Welcome to this instructional guide for how to run football routes. The aim of this video is to showcase all the routes we'll be using in our playbook, plus give some tips on how to run those routes. Here's the list of all the routes that we have in our playbook this year. The first thing we can do is categorize all the routes into three main sections. First, we have shorter routes. These are routes that would be a maximum of 4 to 5 yards away from the line of scrimmage. Next, we have longer routes. All of these routes are supposed to be a minimum of 10 to 12 yards down the field. Now, all of our plays have concepts where we couple a shorter route with a longer route. The larger the disparity of distance between the two, the harder it is to guard both of them. Lastly, we have double moves, or routes that consist of two routes put together. First, let's start off with shorter routes. Here's the list of all the shorter routes that we have in our playbook. First route we're going to talk about is the stick route. All we're doing is we're getting a good vertical push off the line and stopping around 4 to 5 yards. The blue steps in the diagram represents our breakdown. Now here our breakdown on this route is a lot shorter than any other breakdown for our longer routes because we won't have as much momentum when we get to our desired depth. So after a few yards we stop and we turn back towards the quarterback using our inside shoulder. Let's see this demonstrated. Next, let's go over the drag route. Now all we're doing is as soon as the play starts is turning towards the quarterback and going very shallow across the line of scrimmage. Notice on the diagram that the first step I would take is with my lead foot in the rocket stance. This is done to help you turn even more quickly and make the route even more shallow. It's important to note that if I were to run this route from sideline to sideline, I would be at maximum 1 or 2 yards away from the line of scrimmage. Now let's see this demonstrated. The exact inverse of the drag route is the flats route. All we're doing is the same exact thing, but we're going towards the sideline. Notice that the first step I do take is still with my lead foot and I'm pointing it outwards before I continue out. Now let's see this demonstrated. Next we have a slant route. Notice the blue foot, that's our pressure step. All we're doing is we're leaning across an imaginary line, pushing off, snap our hips, and explode out of the route. For more on the pressure step, check out the pressure step video. Now let's see the slant route demonstrated. Notice the pressure step. Lean across slightly, plant your foot vertically up the field, push off, snap your hips, and then explode out of the route. Usually here, I would introduce the spot and pivot routes because they work off of the slant, but technically those are double moves, so we'll save those for the end of the video. Let's instead talk about the quick in. Now here all we're doing is we're pushing up the field about 3 to 4 yards and we'll have a speed cut. By this we mean we're not leaning and sticking like we would a slant, nor are we breaking down and cutting like a longer route. The name should be intuitive, speed cut. We have a pressure step at our height of our route where we have our foot at a 45-degree angle. Push off and snap your head back towards the quarterback. After our pressure step, we immediately have a parallel step that makes sure we run the route parallel to the line of scrimmage and don't fade upfield. On the diagram, the pressure step is represented by the blue foot and the parallel step is represented by the green foot. Now let's see this demonstrated. The quick out is just the inverse of the quick in. Now you may be wondering why the quick in is 3 to 4 yards and the quick out I have is 4 to 5 yards. This is because with our rocket stance we have our inside foot as our lead foot. You can see it on the diagram represented by the red steps. Notice how the QB is to our right, so our inside or right foot is forward. Thus, if we run the quick out, we would need an extra step to make sure our speed cut was with our right foot. One huge note I want to make is that we don't want to make this lead foot business a requirement. It's just there to make sure the diagram is as accurate as possible. but I don't want anyone getting to the line and confusing themselves. The one thing I do want to see is a good pressure step followed by a good parallel step. Get to your depth, pressure step, snap your head around, parallel step, and then accelerate out of the route. Let's see this demonstrated. Notice the pressure step followed by the parallel step, and then accelerate out of the route. Let's move on to the second category of routes we have, longer routes. The one thing all these routes have in common is the fact that we are first pushing vertically to about 10 to 12 yards before making any sort of move. We can see this on the diagram. Notice how every longer route has the same sort of vertical push before making our move in any direction. We even included the stop and go since that's just a curl followed by a go. The first longer route we'll talk about is the curl. Now, all we're doing is we're getting to our depth, breaking down, and coming back to the ball. It's important that we have a good vertical push so that our defender has to guard the deep ball at all times. Our stride should even be getting longer as we're reaching our depth. From there, our breakdown is more effective. We get compact, have a good pressure step, turn with our inside shoulder, and come back towards the ball. For more notes on how to break down, see the breakdown video. For now, let's see a curled route demonstrated. Notice Jake has a really good vertical push where his stride actually gets longer as he's running his route. Then he abruptly starts his breakdown. Has a good pressure step, then comes back towards the ball. Next is the deep in. This is very similar to the quick in, except as opposed to a speed cut, we'll be breaking down and then cutting in. This is because by the time we get to 10 to 12 yards, we'll be running much faster than we would only 3 to 4 yards with a quick in. So all we're doing is we're getting to our depth, breaking down, cutting with a pressure step, then turning in and staying parallel with a parallel step. In the diagram, the blue steps are our breakdown, with the last blue step being our pressure step. The green step is our parallel step. Now let's see this demonstrated. The inverse of the deep in is the deep out. Everything about this route is very similar, except as opposed to cutting in, we'll be cutting out. Remember, good vertical push, break down, pressure step, snap your head around, parallel step, and then accelerate out of the route. Next is the post. It's called the post because the field goal posts are towards the middle of the field, and that's the direction we're cutting in. You can just think of this as a much deeper slant route. Get to your depth, lean over an imaginary line slightly, have a good pressure step, just like the slant, snap your hips, and then accelerate out of the route. The one thing to note is that our pressure step, where we're sticking our foot, we're not slowing down at all. There's no choppiness. All it is one seamless step, pressure it outside, then push off and cut towards the middle of the field. We should not lose any sort of speed or momentum or velocity running up the field at all. Now let's see this demonstrated. The inverse of the post is the corner. It's named a corner because we're cutting towards the corners of the field. Literally, we just want this route run exactly like a post, but just to the outside. As soon as you make your cut, you should be expecting to look over your outside shoulder for the ball. Now let's see this demonstrated. The go is no different than any longer route where we're accelerating for the first 10 to 12 yards. After that, as opposed to cutting in any direction, we're just continuing straight while looking back to find the ball. The one thing to note is that if you're running a go and you feel as though you're covered, don't just stop your route. All of our plays that have a go have another route coupled underneath it. So if you're covered, you're more than likely getting someone open behind you. Now let's see this demonstrated. The last family of routes we have are double moves. True to its name, all these are combinations of two different routes put together. First, we have the spot. Now all it is a slant plus a stick. It's used to find gaps in zone coverage. We slant, and then after a few steps, we slam on the brakes and turn towards the quarterback. Next, we have the pivot. It's a slant plus a quick out. We slant, and then after a few steps, we break down and open towards the line of scrimmage with our inside shoulder, have a parallel step, and then accelerate out of the route. Notice our green foot in the diagram indicating the correct parallel step because we opened up the correct way. Next, we have the chair. It is just a quick out plus a go. We run a quick out, and then after a few steps, we have an additional speed cut, but this time going up the field. As soon as we make our second cut, we should be looking back for the ball while still running vertically up the field. Our last route is a stop and go. This is the money ball. We run a curl, hopefully getting the defender in front of us to bite on the route, then we turn around quickly and continue a go up the field, hopefully for a touchdown.